I have a question for you today. Have you ever heard of a spiritual principality? If not, that's okay, but this is one of those things that I think we all need to wrap our heads around because I guarantee it affects our lives much more than you know. Now, if you're a new Christian, you might not quite understand or believe the spiritual realm, but please just follow along because I assure you, it's real because the Bible talks about it a lot. But regarding principalities, probably the best place to read this is Ephesians 6:12, which says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places." Now, for the sake of time, I won't go into a deep dive about this, but rather cut right to a few basic principles. Understand that in the spiritual realm, there is a highly organized hierarchy amongst both the angelic realm and the demonic, much like there is within a military. And a principality typically will cover a region or perhaps a country on the globe. And one of the biggest jobs they have is deception and to create turmoil for that particular region. But understand, while they are very good at deceiving and causing hostility, it is also localized. So let me give you an example of this. For those new to my channel, while I am an American, I have been living in Australia for the last 14 years. And I know as Americans, you typically look at Australians as, well, the same, because they speak English and do a lot of the same things that we do. But I assure you, there are quite a few key differences that separate us. Now, the biggest example I can give is my own experience of going through COVID in Melbourne. From day one, I was highly suspicious, questioning everything. And then when we started getting locked down, it set me off as I was citing human rights violations and I saw mask wearing incredibly similar to the 1930s Germany and Hitler's rise to power and making Jews wear the Star of David. I know that sounds a little extreme. And if you have the time, I even produced an incredibly long video, which I can't believe is still relevant to this day. In the meantime, most people in Australia, especially in the early days, thought I was crazy. They literally thought I was crazy and would shut me down and tell me, "Oh, John, we just have to do this," or "We'll just flatten the curve and then we'll get back to normal." To which I would reply, no, we don't have to. You willingly give away your God-given freedoms, assuming that these so-called leaders will give them back. But power doesn't work that way. So why do I see it the way I did? Well, because I'm not under the principality that rules over Australia. Consider this. How did the United States come to being as we know it? Well, it started as British colonies originally. But starting in the 1700s, there were uprisings and a desire to split off and be independent, all coming down to a head in something known as the Declaration of Independence, which was signed in 1776. But what was really behind this was the spirit or the principality of rebellion. America was born under the spirit of rebellion. Australia, however, while also colonized by the British, was birthed under a different spirit, a spirit of conformity. While many people came to Australia for different reasons, one of the primary reasons the Brits came here is it was a penal colony. Prisoners were sent here. In America, we're praised for getting up off our chairs and shouting, look at me, see what I can do? Whereas in Australia, it's typically seen as offensive. And in many cases, it becomes highly criticized behavior to the point where people really trying to excel actually get shut down. That's all part of the conformity spirit that's going on here. Now, there's a very important reason why I've given this lesson in social studies, and it's because this principality is destroying America today. And it's almost succeeded. In the comments, I read a very disturbing but accurate view of reality. This comment wrote, "My family are Cherokee. My father would say, the more we emphasize our differences, the more we divide the people." John Prescott, or me, mentioned arrogance and materialism as a spiritual principality in America. But I want to mention racial division, which has again reared its ugly head. The Native Americans refused to put aside slight cultural differences to unite against the white man. A common battle cry for the new republic was, "United we stand, divided we fall." Was this a prophecy? Well, the answer is he's potentially correct. Look, even Jesus said in Mark 3:25, "And if a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand." Take a look at American society today. We're more divided, I believe, than even during the Civil War. Probably a much too simplistic summation of the Civil War is it boiled down to money, taxes, and slavery. But look at America today and pick your poison. You've got racial division, wealth division, conservative versus liberal views division. And only a short time ago, it was okay to have differing opinions and still get along. I mean, that was the melting pot that I grew up with, where we all came from different cultures and backgrounds, but we were American. And while I cannot pinpoint exactly when this principality really started turning up the heat, some of the societal turning points have been the systematic dumbing down of teaching within schools, giving participation ribbons to our children applauding mediocrity. And here's a tough one: the modification of language based on an overemphasis of sensitivity. For example, words such as African American or Native American. The pushing of something called white privilege. And the latest blight to American society has been the destruction of the nuclear family and the violent push for LGBTQ rights to be mainstream. Look, I could go on and on. Living in Australia, look, it's had a lot of challenges, but perhaps the number one blessing that has been is that I don't live under this principality that is over the United States. And since leaving the country, the deceptive goggles, so to speak, have been taken off. And I see things about the US that I know people that have never left the country, you can't see it, or you just don't understand just how controlling this principality is. Now, don't get me wrong. You could call me a racist. You could call me unpatriotic, or look, whatever label you want to put on me. But that would be so far from the truth. Look, I think I'm incredibly patriotic, and I think the progression of the US, especially during the 20th century, was only by God's hand. And as for race, I base what I think of people on how they treat me, not by their skin color or where they're from. But I am very concerned for the United States with its current trajectory. And while I'm very aware the US really isn't in Revelation at the end times, that doesn't mean you just lay down and give up. Look, maybe I'm being too idealistic, but I vividly remember life in the 70s and 80s like it was yesterday. And I speak with great fondness of this time. And despite America's seemingly downward spiral into societal oblivion, it's important that we recognize the true cause of America's degeneration. This is a spiritual principality that is on the attack. And if you are not arming yourself, as Ephesians 6:10 through 20 tells you to do, you're in big trouble. In fact, if you don't even believe in the spiritual realm and the demonic, you might as well just hang it up, because you don't even recognize that there is a real enemy out to steal, kill, and destroy you. That's it, folks. That's my word of the day. If you haven't already, start wrapping your head around the fact that there is a lot of unknown things going on out there. And while we don't need to fully understand the ins and outs, we do have the Bible as a truthful guide amongst a sea of lies. And that is where I put my faith and hope in. I thank you all for my new subscribers, and this is the kind of content that I like to put out, and hopefully the kind of content that you'll watch. And if you haven't yet and think I'm actually worthy of it, please hit that subscription button as we are about to go past the 4,000 mark. Can't believe it. Thanks again to everyone, and I hope to see you guys next time.